Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's big stories. Economic managers believe the strides made on the economy could easily drown out the political noise involving the country's top two leaders.
The House Good Government Committee is postponing its hearing on the Office of the Vice President and DepEd spending tomorrow, just so Vice President Sara Duterte could make it to the NBI summons.
And the former lawmaker who filed a graft case against the Commission on Elections is disqualified by the poll body. We will be speaking to ex-Caloocan Congressman Erice later on.
The fallout between President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte becomes more and more obvious by the day. It could eventually cause deep divisions.
And it's not just on the political front. There are concerns that this rift could deal a real blow to the economy.
But our economic managers believe that our business gains are stable and assured that the economy will not be caught in the crossfire of a political war. Maricel Halili with a big story tonight.
May kinausap na ako na tao. Sinabi ko sa kanya, kapag pinatay ako, patayin mo si BBM, si Lisa Araneta, at si Martin Romualdez. No joke. No joke. Ninyong lahat. Martin Romualdez, Lisa Marcos, Bongbong Marcos.
Kung ganun na lang kadali ang pagplano sa pagpatay ng isang presidente, paano pa kaya ang mga pangkaraniwan na mamamayan? Yung ganyang kriminal na pagtatangka ay hindi dapat pinapalampas. Yan ay aking papalagan. Kaya hindi ko hahayaan magtagumpay ang hangarin ng iba na hatakin ang buong bansa sa burak ng politika.
Amid a very intense political feud that has hogged the headlines for quite a while now, the country's financial managers are confident that the economy will be spared.
It's a business as usual for us, and I don't think that these political noises would have any impact on the economy.
Even foreign investors are supposedly not bothered by the tensions between the two most powerful leaders of the land and their political allies. In fact, their interest in doing business here has not waned one bit.
Actually, there are a lot of investments that are coming in, and we are pursuing those investments. So they haven't mentioned anything yet about these things that are happening in our country.
For the business community, what's important is that the Philippine economic agenda remains resilient in any political season that emerges. As proof, economic managers trumpet the recent grade given by the Standard & Poor's global ratings. S&P maintained the BBB plus rating of the Philippines. It even raised the country's credit rating outlook to positive, which could indicate an upgrade to an A- rating within 24 months, if the prospects are still looking up within that period. These ratings mean international lenders are confident of the Philippines' ability to pay off its debts and are willing to extend loans at reduced interests. On Thursday, President Bongbong Marcos sat down with his economic team to talk about the national budget as well. And while Senate President Francis Escudero and House Speaker Martin Romualdez were also in that meeting, the NEDA chief was quick to clarify that there was no talk about politics.
The president wanted to get the assurance that the priority projects of this administration, projects that have been so well identified as critical to achieving that social and economic transformation that it wants to achieve in the medium term, are funded in 2025.
For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Well, House leaders have decided to postpone the scheduled hearing tomorrow on the OVP's confidential funds so that Vice President Sara Duterte can answer her subpoena from the NBI that is slated on the same day. Marian Enriquez has the details.
The House Committee on Good Governance and Public Accountability has decided to postpone its scheduled hearing tomorrow on the confidential expenses of Vice President Sara Duterte. The reason, so VP Duterte won't use them as an excuse against the summons from the National Bureau of Investigation.
Sinasabi niya, kaya hindi siya pupunta bukas sa NBI dahil meron daw po siyang committee hearing na atenan. Para ang nangyari, kami pa ang nagiging dahilan para o nagiging excuse para po hindi siya maka-attend.
VP Duterte was summoned by the NBI after she claimed to have contracted somebody to kill the first couple and House Speaker Martin Romualdez if in case she gets killed.
Yung issue po dun sa NBI ay mabigat po. It concerns national security po. Kaya po kami po ay magbibigay po kami.
At least hindi na magagamit yung committee na palusot dahil alam po namin na mas mabigat po yung kailangan harapin sa NBI.
No word yet on when the next hearing will be, but for sure, according to the congressman, they're already preparing bills from their investigations. Meanwhile, an alleged screenshot of President Bongbong Marcos's message to House leaders made rounds on social media. It said, in the larger scheme of things, Sara is unimportant, so please do not file impeachment complaints. It will only distract us from the real work of governance, which is to improve the lot of all Filipinos. This information came from broadcaster Anthony Taberna's program, but the congressman themselves said this is fake.
Wala tayong kasiguruduhan kung saan nga po nanggaling yung text messages na yan. Pero kung ang pinag-uusapan impeachment, lahat naman ng tao may karapatan na mag-file ng impeachment. At siguro nasa kanya-kanyang konsensya na yan ng mga bawat miyembro ng Kamara kung susuporta sila sa impeachment na may magpa-file.
Lawmakers insist they haven't really talked about impeachment yet.
They can try, and then let's see, diba? If I get impeached, then that is my end. Tapos.
Ang tunay na usapin dito is may nawawalang pera ng ating gobyerno. Hindi naging tama yung paggastos. Nagkaroon ng kapabayaan sa pag-handle ng confidential fund ng Office of the Vice President at saka ng Department of Education, at kailangan may managot dito.
Meanwhile, the NBI hopes VP Duterte will heed the summons for tomorrow.
Sa tingin ko naman na tutugon si ating Vice President Sara doon sa aming subpoena, at kami nakahanda naman. May panel of investigators ako, puro lawyer, para harapin at pakinggan yung panig ni Vice President Sara.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Let's discuss that further with bagong alyansang Makabayan or Bayan Chair, Teddy Casino. Hi, Mr. Casino, can you hear me? Is it okay if I call you Teddy?
Sure. Good evening, ladies, and good evening to everyone who's watching.
All right, so the buzzword right now, and as it has been for 2 months already, pero mas lumalakas lately, impeachment. You've been very vocal about filing an impeachment complaint versus Vice President Sara. And of course, we know that you are the Vice President of the Makabayan Coalition. Ano po yung plano?
Well, we are currently drafting an impeachment complaint. And it is wrong to characterize all this as simply political noise. The charges are serious. The issues of the confidential funds involve at least 150 million pesos to as much as 600 plus million pesos. So these are plunder levels. And so these are serious issues. But aside from the anomalies, there is also the cover-up and the attempt of Vice President Sara Duterte to hide these anomalies from Congress. And then another big issue, separate issue, but serious no less, were the threats made by Vice President Duterte against the President, the First Lady, and the Speaker of the House. So this is not political noise. These are serious wrongdoings, and the Vice President should be held accountable. And impeachment is one of the mechanisms in the Constitution by which we can remove high public officials who have done these kinds of wrongdoings.
Okay, Teddy, what would be the grounds that you're seeing here? Is the kill threat included in that impeachment complaint?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, initially, well, there are 6 grounds for impeachment, but we're looking at 3 of the 6 grounds. First, of course, there's graft and corruption. Secondly, betrayal of the public trust in the way that the vice president tried to cover up for these acts of graft and corruption. And the last would be probably other high crimes, and that would include the threats made against President, the First Lady, and the Speaker of the House. So the legal team is currently evaluating all the evidences and information that will be included in the impeachment complaint. So yeah, once that complaint is drafted, it will go around those who would like to file the complaint, and we will be looking for endorsers in the House of Representatives.
Who are you looking at to be the endorsers for this?
Wala pa.
Would it be
Of
fair
course,
to assume?
has already expressed their interest in endorsing the complaint. But of course, we will be targeting as much members of Congress as possible.
Okay, Teddy, the Ombudsman, Samuel Martires, mentioned today in an interview that he sees no grounds for investigating the Vice President related to the recent hearings on how the confidential funds have been used, so on and so forth. I mean, what would you have to say to that? Kung hindi ito imbestigahan ng Ombudsman, yung possible charges for plunder and also corruption, I mean, ano yung irregularities na nakikita mo rito? Hindi ba parang pinapaliwanag naman ng Vice Presidente na ito hindi ay ng kanyang staff na ito ay napunta sa security officers, and sabi ng Vice Presidente sa isang interview na binigay daw ang budget sa kanya ng Disyembre, kaya kinakailangan nilang gastusin ng mabilis. I mean, what would you have to comment on that?
Well, first of all, yung binigay sa security officers, that in itself is already a violation of existing rules regarding disbursements of confidential intelligence funds. Ibang usapin pa dyan, yung lumabas sa COA audit na ginamit sa mga bagay na hindi naman dapat pinagagamitan ng confidential funds. The issue of investigations, well, I think the Ombudsman is making a premature statement. Maybe it would be better for him to wait for the recommendations of the Committee on Good Government. Masyadong adelantado ang naging statement ng Ombudsman, which is sad considering that he is supposed to be the #1 guardian of the people as far as graft and corruption is concerned.
Okay.
But the Ombudsman is one venue, but again, the impeachment through Congress and the Senate is another venue. And if we finally decide to file an impeachment complaint, there will be due process. The trial will be in the Senate. And the trial in the Senate will be chaired by no less than the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who will be presiding over the Senate trial on the impeachment. So this is a totally separate process from cases to be filed, if ever, at the level of the Ombudsman. Iba pa yung criminal cases dyan, which is aimed to determine criminal liability. Kasi sa impeachment naman, ang parusa lang dyan will be removal from public office.
Yun nga yung itatanong ko sa iyo, no, Teddy, because as we have been hearing nonstop over the past few days, especially this week, impeachment is very much a political exercise. I think everyone is pretty much in agreement with that.
Yes.
Some people would want to see accountability and liability, for the Vice President. This is with regard to the misuse of funds. Ngayon kasi may dalawa ng issue, Kailangan natin hiwalin yung pag-misuse ng funds, yung mga allegations na yon, doon sa parang yung death threats or those statements that she made, right? With regard to the misuse of funds, would it be enough na parang i-impeach lang siya, hindi siya mananagot? Ano yung plano, no? I mean, I'm assuming you guys are after accountability and liability. Okay, so are
Actually, the aim of impeachment is to remove a high government official.
Correct.
We're talking about the president, vice president, members of the Supreme Court, and commissioners of the constitutional commissions. The objective of an impeachment complaint or process is to remove them from their office. And that is important if we are going to be serious about the criminal cases. Kasi ang problema, if they are still in these high positions, these are positions of power, these are positions of influence, and they can very well use these positions to sabotage or to undermine the criminal or administrative cases that can be filed against them. So the purpose of impeachment is precisely to remove them from that position of influence and power, so that criminal, administrative, and probably even civil cases can be filed, and this can prosper without undue interference or influence from high officials.
Right. Teddy, nagsalita na rin yung chairman ng Committee on Good Government, Representative Joel Chua. He said na unsure kung mag-file ba ng impeachment, given siguro yung timing nga, papasok na ng midterms, and of course, everyone's gonna be busy with that. Appreciated his candor over there. But what are your thoughts on the timing? Magpapasko na, mag-e-election na.
Well, that will always be a consideration because, at the end of the day, an impeachment is about votes. And if you don't have the votes and you don't even have a quorum, medyo problema talaga dyan. So these are things that we will have to weigh, and the Congress will have to weigh. But the demand for accountability and the search for accountability should not be undermined by these procedural issues.
Pwede ba kami magpahula ng
go ahead. Yeah. Because what is wrong is what is wrong. And if impeachment is the process, the mechanism by which the Constitution allows that kind of accountability, then we will do it and let Congress basically problem solve this issue of timing, this issue of election na baka wala ng mga congressman at senador.
Former Senator Tito Soto tweeted kasi the other day regarding timing. Can you help us understand the tweet? Sabi niya, no impeachment proceedings shall be initiated against the same official more than once within a period of 1 year. Wala lang. Just a reminder to anyone concerned. What could he have meant by that?
In the past kasi nangyari na may nag-file ng impeachment complaint, kunwari. It was actually the allies of the sitting president at that time who filed a defective impeachment complaint. And the objective really was to start the 1-year ban. So probably former Senate President Soto is trying to warn those who would like to file an impeachment complaint na baka maunahan ng isang bogus complaint that will now jumpstart the 1-year ban. We are conscious of that, and those that has happened in the past, and that should be avoided.
Okay, Teddy, as Shawn mentioned earlier, impeachment is a political exercise. It's a numbers game, and it only takes one congressman in the report of the committee, and it will need 1/3 of votes in the House, but 2/3 of votes in the Senate. Teddy, do you think the articles of impeachment will prosper at the upper chamber? Do you think the numbers will be solid at the Senate?
Alam mo, yung numbers game, but when you say it's a numbers game, we tend to downplay the seriousness of the process and the charges. Because, of course, at the end of the day, the congressmen and senators will have to vote. But their vote will have to be based on what is presented. So, hindi lang simpleng numbers game yan. It is also about evidence, how strong the arguments are, how strong the defense will be. Because there is a process and there is due process that have to be observed. And this will be a public hearing. So, hindi rin pwedeng ang trato lang ng mga kongresista at senador dyan. Hindi, numbers game lang naman yan. It doesn't matter whether there is strong evidence or not. Kasi at the end of the day, sisingilin din sila ng taong bayan. So, our experience is that once an impeachment is filed in the Senate and the charges are serious, it's anybody's ball game. At the outset, hindi mo masasabing kung ano yung numero kasi it's a trial. And there will be more information that can emerge during the trial stage.
Okay, Teddy, we're talking about confidential funds here, and people seem to be divided. Okay, if you look through all the noise, diba, on one hand, they are confidential, dapat, so paano mo nga naman ililiquidate, no, yung mga bagay-bagay na walang resibo at mahirap ilagay sa naresibuhan. On the other hand, yes, kailangan natin accountability kasi pera yan ng taong bayan, right? Ano yung opinion nyo, yung stand nyo on confidential funds, at least for your whole block, right? Dapat ba talaga ang civilian agencies ay binibigyan pa nito?
Well, that's the basic point. In the first place, bakit may 500 million in confidential funds ang Office of the Vice President when it is not involved? It does not have in its mandate anything about intelligence gathering or similar activities. Siguro, if ever, dapat kung ano yung confidential funds ng nakaraang administration for the Vice President, ganun lang. But masyado kasing lumobo. Now, of course, these are confidential funds, but still, there are protocols, there are standards, there are rules that govern the use of confidential funds. It is clear what items can be used, that you can use confidential funds for. There is a system of liquidation, and clearly the Vice President failed to follow those very basic rules. Kasi ginamit niya yung funds sa mga bagay na hindi dapat pinanggagamitan ng confidential funds. You know, groceries, yung public transport, hindi part ng confidential funds. And then doon sa liquidation, napaka-basic lang naman ng requirement eh. May totoong tao, pangalan, pirma, and then the date should reflect kailan ba ginamit yung funds. Hindi nagtutugma yung mga nagtutugma yung mga reports at yun nga may mga pangalan na parang obvious na gawa-gawang pangalan. Now and then this recent revelation na hindi naman pala dumaan dun sa disbursing officer or ginawa ng disbursing officer in lump sum, in cold cash, all these millions of pesos binigay dun sa security officer who is not mandated to disburse such funds. And feeling ko, gawa-gawa rin lang yun to make it appear, kunwari, na dumaan yan sa security officer, military, therefore something to do with intelligence. But I have my very serious doubts about that.
Yun nga, pero
most likely, and this is what happens in confidential funds in other agencies, talagang slush fund yan ng head of agency. At gagamitin yan, and then afterthought na lang kung paano i-liquidate. And I feel that is what happened. Ang problema na booking. Ang problema lumabas yung COA report. And so they will have to address that now.
Okay. So some people would say nga na booking, di ba? Pero some would also say na parang tinitira sila. Yun ang sinasabi nila. That aside, don't you find it ironic na yung Congress din naman yung nagbigay sa kanya to begin with, both houses pa, nung 500 million na yon? I mean, shouldn't we look into that?
It's not ironic because that is the function of Congress.
Right,
but it is also the function of Congress to conduct oversight over the budget.
Okay, but in
And on that point, tingin namin, importante rin silipin talaga yung confidential funds ng Office of the President because that is much, much larger. During the time of Duterte, that ballooned from, I think, 2 billion, naging 4, at one point, it even became 5 billion. And again, the suspicion is that ito yung ginamit dun sa mga extrajudicial killings and other DDS operations. So I think it is also incumbent upon Congress, kung sinisilip nila yung confidential funds ng Vice President, they should also definitely look at the confidential funds of the President, whether it is the incumbent President or the previous President. Kasi ang laki-laki niyan. We're talking about billions in annual funds.
Teddy, the Vice President has said to the media that in the event that she is impeached, that the President can nominate a legislator or a nominee from the Senate or House of Representatives, which should be confirmed by majority of the members of both chambers. Are you ready for that scenario? In case, I mean, she was implying that it is the House Speaker, Martin Romualdez, who wants to be Vice President.
Well, that is a possibility. In the past, nung na-impeach si ERAP, it was Senator Gingona. So they got the vice president from the Senate. I think that is the more ideal scenario. And in practice, that is what has been done before. Pero tingin ko kapag ang pinalit nila ay si Martin Romualdez, it will validate everything that the vice president has been saying, and it will cause much worse mayhem if that happens. So I don't think that should
For
even be
2028.
considered.
Okay, on that final word, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us tonight and engaging us. Bayan Chair and former Representative Teddy Casino. Maraming salamat.
Meanwhile, it's been 3 days since the supporters of Vice President Sara Duterte have gathered at the EDSA shrine. These supporters set up camp with placards and tarpaulins. Amidst the crowd, Reverend Father Jerome Ceciliano has continued holding their regularly scheduled masses. Father Jerome stated that he cannot prevent the rallies, emphasizing that the supporters have the right to peacefully express their support for the vice president. Apart from the mall security, there are assigned Quezon City police officers around the shrine, while officers from the Eastern Police District have also been deployed. It is unclear how long the Duterte supporters plan to stay in the EDSA shrine.
Up next, we'll have on the big story former Caloocan Representative Edgar Erice to discuss the Comelec's decision to disqualify him in the 2025 polls. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. Former Caloocan Congressman Egay Erice slams the Commission on Elections for disqualifying him in the 2025 elections. In a 13-page resolution, the poll body barred Erice from running for allegedly propagating false information on different platforms. Comelec Chairman George Garcia inhibited from this case. Garcia was included in the graft complaint earlier filed by Erice over the 18 billion peso contract of 2025 election provider Miru Systems. Erice finds his disqualification flimsy and plans to take his case to the Supreme Court. And tonight we have the former lawmaker with us. Welcome to the big story, former Caloocan Congressman Edgar Egay Erice.
Good evening.
Okay, Congressman, first of all, you were suspended from running in the 2025 congressional race on the grounds of propagation of false information to disrupt the electoral process. Ang sinabi po ng Comelec 2nd Division, there was not any modicum of evidence provided by the respondent except statements made in the media. What would you have to say to that?
There's no such thing in the Omnibus Election Code. Kasi they're citing Section 261, disrupting of the elections during the voting. Pero yung before the elections, wala namang ganyan. At hindi naman ako nagde-disrupt ng election dahil wala pa namang eleksyon. Ang dinidisrupt ko, yung corruption of billions of pesos due to the Miro Comelec deal. At talagang magulo, hindi naman transparent ang Comelec dyan. At hindi naman basta chismis yung sinasabi ko because I filed a case as certiorari before the Supreme Court questioning the legality of using prototype system. Kasi yan bawal yan sa Section 7 ng ating automated election law. And for 9 years, I've been in the Senate Congressional Committee on Automation. For 12 years, I've been in the House Committee on Suffrage, and this is my expertise. Na-involve ako dito because I was called by the Committee on Suffrage as a resource person. At nung pinakita nila sa akin, sinabi ko nga, this is illegal because it violates Section 7 of the Automated Election Code. And they also violated Section 12 dahil hindi nila convene yung Comelec Advisory Council before coming out with the terms of reference on the bidding. Pangatlo, nagkaroon pa rin ako ng supplement to the petition kasi ginawa nila dapat hindi na pwede yung Miro joint venture kasi nag-withdraw na yung isang partner under the civil code. Pag nag-withdraw isang partner, hindi na pwede makipag-transact, mag-wind up na lang. So, yan yung mga question ko, maliwanag naman, hindi yan chismis. Pagdating naman sa corruption, I filed a case against Chairman Garcia and other Comelec officials for rigging the bidding. At nag-cite ako, nagsabit ako ng mga evidences. So, ito, ginagantihan lang nila ako. Pero, confident naman ako na the Supreme Court will not allow this. Kasi maliwanag naman, ignorance of the law, yung Section 261, it pertains to violations by person during actual voting. At doon sa mga voting, pinilit lang talaga.
How confident are you, Kong Egay, na magpo-prosper ito and in time? For the 2025 elections?
Well, hindi pa naman final. But I cannot go to the Supreme Court yet kasi hindi pa naman final. So I have to go through the process by filing a motion for reconsideration before the Comelec en banc. And I will do that on the last day on Monday. After that, then I will go to the Supreme Court if they will if they'll disqualify me, if the en banc disqualifies me, then I will go to the Supreme Court. At tingin ko naman, very confident naman ako na walang batayan yung kanilang disqualification. Talagang galit lang sila sa akin. May axe to grind sila sa akin dahil sa mga sinasabi ko. Isa pa, yung opponent ko, ninang ni Chairman Garcia, lawyer pa niya. 2 beses ko nakalaban niya, natalo ko siya. Tapos siya ang lawyer sa HRET. Tapos talagang very, very close talaga sa kanya. Kaya siguro nung sinabi ko, nag-inhibit siya. Pero sabi ko, just the same, yung Miro deal, yung Miro Comelec deal, lahat ng mga kino-question kong Comelec resolutions, magkakasama talaga sa kanila. Wala nag-oppose. So sabi ko, talagang galit sila lahat sa akin. Parang na-irritate sila dahil very persistent ako ever since. Dahil alam ko naman talagang mali. So, dinidisqualify nila ako because of irritation. Not any violation of the law, but by irritation.
Okay. Per Congressman, you did file itong graft charges against Comelec Chairman George Garcia and 7 other officials back in August. But from then until now, do you have stronger evidence to back up yung mga allegations niyo po?
Well, alam mo naman yung I think yung mga evidences ko very strong. Meron akong petition para yung ombudsman makuha yung mga documents from Comelec. Kasi that will be the evidence, yung mga documents. They will have to submit it. Pero alam mo naman dito sa bansa natin, ay medyo matagal talaga ang gulong ng hustisya.
Ayun na nga. So kung Egay, tatanong ko na to sa'yo. So di natin sure kung aabot ba itong mga petition mo and all the recourses
that you can take. Well, aabot. I have many options.
Okay.
I have many options. I'm very confident. Hindi ako alam mo, I've been in politics since I was 15 years old. Dumaan na ako sa lahat ng laban. I've been, yan naman talaga yung advocacy ko, political and electoral reforms.
Yun nga, itatanong ko sa'yo kung Egay, anong mas importante sa'yo? Kasi ngayon, dalawa ito no? Mas importante ba sa'yo na tutukan itong nagyayari sa yung mga allegations mo against Miro, naginipig nga tayo nitong Miro systems at yung mga anomalya since nag-drop out yung construction corporation sa St. Timothy or St. Gerard, one of the two. Or mas importante ba sa'yo itong campaign mo to, be a congressman again ng Caloocan?
I'm fighting what is right. I'm fighting for righteousness. Bahala na ang Diyos kung ano yung palagay ko, kahit ano man mangyari, laban lang ako. Kung ano man yung bigay sa akin ng Panginoon, yun naman yung tatanggapin ko.
Pero Congressman, binigyan po ba kayo ng pagkakataon na magbigay ng mga ebidensya? Kasi bakit kaya sinabi nila that you were not able to provide any
Ganito
modicum
kasi,
of evidence?
ginawan din nila ako ng medyo ano dyan eh. Yung si Raymond Salipot, hindi ko, unknown person, filed a case against me sa law department. I think that was October 20, dinala dun sa bahay namin, pinareceive sa akin. I was given 10 days to answer that. So, nasagot ko naman, 10 days. Pero unknowingly, the same person filed another case on October 24. Kaya lang, hindi pinadala sa bahay namin. Pinadala sa email ko. At binigay lang sa akin, hindi 10 days, 5 days. Hindi ko naman nabuksan yung email ko for... Dahil hindi naman ako talagang nagbubukas kaagad ng email because medyo mobile ako. So, nag-lapse yung 5 days. Yung 10 days, mas nauna kong sinagot, hindi nila dinesisyonan. Pero yung mas huling complaint na hindi ko nga nasagot dahil hindi ko nabuksan yung email, ay yun ang dinesisyon nila.
Congressman, I know
Pero
this is...
ang confident ako, alam mo yung Comelec, alam naman nila yung batas eh. Very blatant yung ginawa nila dito. Dahil yung Section 261, hindi yan, alam nila na hindi yan violation ngayon, kundi it will only be, offenses will only be violated during the time of elections. Wala pa namang election ngayon.
Congressman, with what you've seen, can you help us understand the gravity of your allegations against Comelec and the irregularities in bidding? Is it just about money, or can this possibly compromise the results of the upcoming elections? With what you can talk about?
Kasi, for example, ang allegation ko lang naman, it's prototype. Our elections will be turned into parang ginipig tayo ng kumpanya. So, inadmit naman during the Senate Finance Committee, tinanong siya ni Senator Erice of the Veros, has this been used in any country in the world? Sabi niya, so, hindi nagamit. So, ginipig tayo. Tapos, yun lang ang mga allegations ko. Kaya lang, medyo naging komplikado kasi nung naging kalaban ni Mayor Vico Soto si Diskaya, yung si Diskaya, na-discover ni Mayor Vico na yung St. Timothy Construction, yung mga owners, dami lang. Ang talaga may-ari, yung kalaban niya. So, ang ginawa ni Chairman Garcia, sinabi niya may conflict of interest, so pinag-withdraw niya yung St. Timothy. Pero upon withdrawal of St. Timothy, under the civil code, pagka joint venture, may isang nag-withdraw, wala na yung joint venture. So, sino pa yung katransaksyon ng Comelec? Dapat mag-wind up na yung joint venture. Pangalawa, yung St. Timothy Construction, yun yung nagbigay ng net financial contracting capacity, yung puhunan. Ngayon, wala sila, wala nang puhunan. Di ba? So, ang sabi naman they will come up with a resolution that they will accept new replacement NFCC. Wala naman lumabas na resolution. Ang sinabi lang ng Miro, they provided an NFCC, a new NFCC. Pero malabo din yun. Bakit? Hindi pwede naman 100% yung Miro kasi merong 60-40 prohibition. Dapat Filipino-owned yung...
Kung bakit sa tingin nyo...
Marami talagang problema. Sabi naman nila, baka daw yung mga Filipino partners, pakita nila. Kaya nga nila kinuha yung St. Timothy noon kasi yung Filipino partners, walang capacity for the NFCC.
Okay. Bakit kaya walang apart from you, no one else is making noise about this issue?
Yan ang tinatanong ko. Bakit yung Senate, saka yung House, I've been in the Senate Committee, or lagi, kami, binubusisi namin lagi. Ngayon wala, tahimik lahat eh.
Okay.
Sabi ko nga, yung committee ni Senator Amy, pag kami nangyari sa election natin, will be committing a sin of omission. And also the House. Kasi nung inimbita ako as a resource person sa House, nag-provide ako ng mga information. Yung pangatlong hearing, inimbita ako. Pagkatapos, kinausap ko ng chairman, pasensya na pare, pinahinto yung hearing. Andun ako.
Well, the journey doesn't end here. We will be awaiting the petition and the appeal.
Basta sa
on
akin
your
importante
side.
ito kasi ang gusto ko pag may laban ako, tinatapos ko eh. Ganyan naman
Correct.
yung aking prinsipyo. So, ang sabi doon sa resolution, they are disqualifying me to prevent na yung magpatuloy yung disinformation na ginagawa ko. Nagkakamali sila doon kahit 10 beses nila akong disqualify. Tutuloy ko itong advocacy ko na ito. And I don't think that the Supreme Court will allow that. Yung ginawa nilang sobrang ignorance of the law.
Well, if you go down, then go down swinging. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us, former Caloocan Congressman Erice.
Up next, the bicameral committee convenes to reconcile provisions in the 2025 national budget. The details of that when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back to Watching the Big Story here on One News.
The bicameral conference committee kicks off deliberations for the proposed 2025 national budget. Some items on the agenda were, of course, the proposed additional budget for the office of the vice president. Now, remember that both the House and the Senate only approved 733.198 million pesos for the OVP after the confidential fund issues. But some senators later wanted to add funding for the OVP's operational and manpower costs. Also on the agenda today was the fate of the AKAP or Ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita program of the Department of Social Welfare and Development. The lower house inserted 39.8 billion pesos for this line item in the budget, but was removed in the version of the upper chamber. Now, before deliberations started, leaders of the Senate Committee on Finance and the House Committee on Appropriations reminded their fellow lawmakers to only bring up worthwhile topics in the discussion.
Kailangan din nating tiyakin na sapat para matugunan ang mga tunay na pangangailangan ng bansa. Today, we will make those tough decisions. But let's not forget, this is also a time for cooperation and compromise.
As we move forward, let us find ways to reconcile our differences and ensure that our efforts align with the programs and priorities of the present administration.
Okay, before we say goodbye, here's our big picture on this Thursday night. And this is it. Mas malamig pa, no? Sa relationship ng ating presidente at vice president. South Korea. Oh, di ba? Lahat na lang, no? South Korea's capital, Seoul, covered in snow. It is not the winter wonderland people expect, as this is actually the heaviest snowfall in Seoul since records began over a century ago. This led to several casualties and disruption of flights and other services. The unusually heavy November snow has been attributed to warmer than usual temperatures of the seas to the west of the Korean peninsula, encountering currents of cold air. Now, according to Seoul's meteorology forecast division, up to 20 centimeters of additional snowfall is still expected in the coming days. They were actually warned that they were going to have a blistering cold winter. Inekis ko siya, okay, hindi ako pupunta dyan.
It's always cold in Korea when it's December. Actually, it reaches, I think, negative
It's really cold. Ibang level. But they were warned though, and they are, I think, ready naman na, well, how can you be ready for natural disasters? That's always what we talk about, no? Pero yun nga, talagang unbelievably cold daw yung winter nila.
Kanina, nakita ko sa frontline, may snow na sa Baguio.
Oh, talaga?
Talaga ba? Baka styrofoam lang yun or foam machine.
Oo, di ba? Tourist attraction yun dun. Gusto niyo maka-experience
sa tapat ng Baguio Country Club yan.
Pero grabe ang traffic yun na hindi yun ano. Ay, actually, hindi yun supernatural. Normal yun.
Man-made
during holidays.
kasalanan natin dyan. No? Hindi naman natin. No? Gawan nyo ng bagong road na ating summer capital para naman makaranas tayo ng malamig-lamig na Pasko. On that note, no, wala tayong oras talaga. That's it for the show tonight. 27 nights to go before Christmas.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.